Let's get you set for a new college football weekend. It is week number 10, the first Saturday in November, in a game of the year 4 potential on Saturday afternoon, noon Eastern time kick in State College, Pennsylvania. It's number 3 Penn State. It's number 4 Ohio State. The Buckeyes, a 3.5-point favorite in Happy Valley. Total has worked its way down by a point, 45 and the hook. Zeno, let's start with narrative, because of course narrative is going to factor into this handicap, the outcome and the reaction in a large way. Ryan Day is 2-6 against AP top 5 teams, and his time at the helm of this Ohio State football program, not good enough. James Franklin is 1-9 against Ohio State during his decade at Penn State, now year number 11, and 3-17 outright against AP top 10 foes. Also, not good enough. So for which coach and program does the narrative sadly continue by the end of Saturday afternoon?
I mean, I don't like the way Ohio State is playing right now. That said, Penn State, if Braden Locke doesn't throw that pick six, I don't know that Penn State wins that game last week. I mean, that was just a gut punch, kick in the groin kind of, for Wisconsin backers last week, me being one of them, of course. Otherwise, I still wouldn't be upset about it. But, I got to give the nod here to Penn State just a little bit, especially with a 3.5. Like, this feels like a field goal game all around. Like, there's nothing about this that doesn't scream it's going to be tight. Ryan Day is always sort of choked in these big moments, particularly on the road. If this game was at the Horseshoe, it'd be a completely different conversation. But, you get a 12 o'clock kick, which favors Penn State, I think, more than anything, being in their home turf. And Drew Allard's been really good. He's taking care of the football. I know he was banged up last week. I assume, given this number is where it is, that he's playing again this week. And after 2 tough road wins, they come back home in a favorable spot. And all of a sudden, the Ohio State offense is starting to look a little bit human. Like, when you look at what happened last week at home against Nebraska, is it the wake-up call that the Buckeyes needed to say, hey, we need to play better? Or is it the reality of, guess what, you're finally playing a team that, you're finally starting to play teams that are of the same ilk of you? No disrespect to Iowa, but on the road, they're not the same team. And Michigan State's offense is not very good, a.k.a. bad, a.k.a. they don't score a ton. So the last 2 weeks and this week will tell us really what Ohio State is. And I think we find out that Penn State here, even if they get a loss here, it'll be one of those that the committee will look at favorably upon, because they're going to make life hell for 3 hours for Ohio State on Saturday.
Positives for Penn State: they don't have to go to the airport, which has a short tarmac out there. They didn't have to do that at all. And also negative, though, I disagree on this. I think if this game was a night game and a whiteout game, Ohio State, for me, would be in much more trouble.
Huge battle taking place in South Beach. Miami, fresh off the dominating home win over Florida State, now opens as a 21.5-point home favorite over the Duke Blue Devils and Manny Diaz. Duke right now sitting at 6-2. Their quarterback, Malik Murphy, did have a dynamic performance against SMU. Couldn't pull it out. Over 200 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. The last time these teams played back in 2022, Duke did get the 20-plus victory over the Hurricanes. Coach, how do you see this game playing out?
No, I'm excited to see it. I mean, Miami's got the best talent, and it'll be hard for them to lose this game. But Manny Diaz, he has a couple of things. One, he's from Miami, and this is a huge game for the former Miami coach. But he's going to pressure. He's going to come after that quarterback. He loves to penetrate and pressure quarterbacks. And I believe, and he goes back to his first coaching job was with my dad at Florida State, and he learned that penetration defense. I can see them going after Cam, making something happen, probably play a little a zone blitz where they play deep behind a blitz, because when you blitz, the blitz takes up the run and also pressures the quarterback. But when you're playing deep, you give up those short throws. But I believe they're going to come after him, because that's not the only way Manny Diaz knows how to play.
Yeah, absolutely, Coach. This is the matchup for me. I'll get your take on it. You look at Duke right now, giving up 160 rushing yards per game. We talked about it in opening segment. They allowed well over 200. to SMU, right? So if you're Miami and Damian Martinez and their backup running back Fletcher, you got to be licking your chops saying we have to run the football on this front seven. But the other matchup for me is obviously Cam Ward going up against that secondary. They're only giving up 166 passing yards per game. They're holding opposing quarterbacks to 57% completion percentage. They might force Cam Ward to dink and dunk down the field, short to intermediate throws, to be patient. How do you see that matchup playing out from the Duke's perspective?
You're reading my mind. That's exactly what I think they're going to do. They're going to come after Cam Ward. They're going to make sure and then play a zone behind it and make him dink and dunk and see if he's patient enough to do it. And then they can get to him and maybe get him flustered a little bit. But I don't think they want to. You can't sit back and let Cam Ward have all day, because you know what? He'll take all day. He'll sit there as long as he has to till somebody comes open. So I think you're going to see that. And the thing about a blitz, if a blitz is done correctly, it blitzes into the run and it goes after the quarterback. So you're really trying to take care of both things at one time. A blitz, especially a zone blitz, where you're blitzing through the runs to the quarterback. You're kind of making sure you don't give up one to get the other.
Yeah, and I think if this game does get into a shootout, in the high 50s, 60s, that would benefit Cam Ward in that offense. They're averaging well over 300 passing yards per game, pounding the rock now for about 194 yards per game. Damian Martinez coming on. They have fresh legs in the ball game at all times, and the offensive line shows continuity. They're coming into form at the end of the regular season, and that's what you want to see. But, Malik Murphy and Duke's offense, they're more methodical, but they do put up points. Malik Murphy does have 17 touchdowns this year, only 5 interceptions. You look at Duke last year, Coach, they only had 14 touchdown passes. As a team, Malik Murphy through week number 9 has already eclipsed that. He's been a great addition to that offense this season.
Zeno, not many undefeated teams left in college football entering the month of November. Army, however, though, is certainly that Commander-in-Chief's trophy and that positioning very much at stake because Air Force lost to Navy and got routed. Now it's Army's time to take on the Falcons. Army, a hefty favorite. Can the Black Knights win and cover by more than 3 touchdowns?
I mean, it is a sad state of affairs when the best football team in New York is the Army Black Knights. Sorry, Jets and Giants.
Sad?
No, it's not sad, but I mean, it's, listen, I'm happy about the whole thing. I'm not going to lie. Now, that said, I will be open with the audience here and tell everybody I feel like I already made a mistake. I got very giddy earlier in the week when this line came out, and particularly the first half line came out. Now, this thing opened up around 23-24. It's come down. Why? Because Army being that big of a favorite is sort of ludicrous. Go back to the Air Force versus Navy game. I played Navy first half in that game, -6.5. They easily covered. Why? Because Air Force is one of the lowest scoring teams in the first half in the country, averaging 7.8 points in the first half. Army at home this year, averaging nearly 29 points per game in the first half at home this year. I laid 13.5 with Army, which I feel incredibly gross and disgusting about because there's a lot of ways this could go wrong. It has to follow the game script that has followed for Army the entire year, which is they score at least 21 and they don't allow more than 7, which an Air Force team doesn't score a whole lot more than 7 in the first half here. I would not play Army to cover the entire game. There's a good chance they can do it, but again, that requires them to be up 24-3 at half, and they continue to roll in the second half.
Yeah, Zeno, it's really interesting. This Air Force team, not the Air Force team in the last few years. In fact, the Falcons are the only team in the country that has failed to cover a number this year, 0-7 ATS.
Coach, one of the most intriguing matchups takes place at noon in Fayetteville. We got Ole Miss on the road, now as 7.5-point road favorites taking on Talon Green and the Arkansas Razorbacks. We saw Arkansas put up 58 points last week in Starkville. They win that matchup 58-25 over the Bulldogs. We saw Ole Miss struggle a little bit in the first half with Oklahoma. They pulled away in the second half to win that ball game 26-14 last year in Oxford. Ole Miss did get the victory 27-20. Coach, how do you see this game playing out on Saturday afternoon?
Well, I'm not sure we'll see a whole lot more points, but I see the same team winning. Ole Miss, I think, is going to win. the thing is, Taylor Green has done a great job. He's been kind of the spark of this Arkansas team. And Fayetteville's a tough place to play. Go ask Tennessee what happened when they went into Fayetteville. And I've coached there a couple of times. They've got a rowdy bunch of people. And this team has got a lot of confidence. But the key is that this is not your old Ole Miss football team. Back a few years ago, it was they could score, but they didn't play defense. Well, this team's the number one defensive rush team in the country. They're very physical, and they have the perfect defense, I think, to keep Arkansas in check. And really, Ole Miss, they got to win. They got to win out. They got to win out just to have a chance to be still in the conversation about the SEC with 2 losses already. And I'll say this, because of their talent level, I put them in that category of those teams that really could be, maybe should be undefeated because they have enough talent to beat everybody on their schedule that they played so far.
Yeah, to your point, they're only giving up 11 points per game, 76 rushing yards allowed against opposing offenses, only 2.1 yards per carry. They force teams into long, predictable third downs, playing very solid third down defense. So I agree with that assessment. The biggest thing, too, and takeaway from last week is that Trey Harris, their big play wide receiver, was a late scratch, did not play in the matchup. We saw Jackson Dart throw for 215 yards. Watkins, the other stellar wide receiver, stepped up, made enough plays. He had over 50 yards receiving in the ballgame. They just find ways to grind it out. And Jackson Dart, a dual-threat quarterback. They're going to need his mobility against that front seven in terms of Arkansas. But I'll say this about the Arkansas offense. Taylor Green accounted for 5 touchdowns last week. He did it on the ground with his legs. He did it through the air. This is an offense that is very balanced now heading into week number 10. And again, Sam Pittman is a coach, especially as an underdog, that always brings his lunch pail. They're always within the number. I like the Razorbacks plus the points in this matchup.
I'm with you on that. I do definitely like the Razorback in the points. I see a game much more the score of Ole Miss's past game with Oklahoma. But again, I do think both teams have solid defenses. Ole Miss clearly a more talented defense. Dart, I think, is one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the country. He's got incredible quarterbacking skills. Trey Harris that's a tough guy. He's been out for a while, or inconsistent, or unhealthy for a while, and I do think that's one of the reasons they're not scoring as many points. But I think they're so strong on defense, and Dart always keeps them in the game that I don't see. I see them having just a little bit more offense than Arkansas has.